Dummy Switch Pod, and we're here. We're here to spread the news. In case you didn't know that the All
In
Blacks
case,
lost this weekend.
ooh, that must have hurt. That must have hurt. It's
We're
good.
here
It's good to be
to
back.
Yeah. It's always good to be back. Unfortunately, one game cancelled, so it limits sort of what we can talk about. But what we can talk about
Yeah.
is a Griquas Sharks game. A Griquas
Ooh,
Sharks game. It was a heater.
yeah.
Down to the
I,
wire. Let's get straight into Friday night's action.
yeah.
I don't know if you want to take it away. Maybe start
Yeah.
with
Look,
Griquas, go with Sharks. How you feeling?
look. I'm just glad that we managed to sneak that one home as a Shark supporter. But look, at the end of the day, we did expect a sort of response or reaction from the Griquas. I just didn't expect that much of a response from them because they came out all guns blazing and they were looking to win that game. And the Sharks can definitely count themselves lucky to have come away with the win. I feel that their problems still continue and they continue to be exposed, particularly from a pack perspective, work rate perspective. It just seems like they just thought that, that was going to be a walk in the park. And I think if you recall early in the season when or start of the tournament, the Griquas had a good performance against the Bulls. I did say that, teams like the Sharks, must be very careful uh, of the Griquas, and they almost paid the price this last weekend. Overall, I just feel, look, the Griquas, hopefully they can continue to sort of improve and click
They
as
were
a
much.
unit.
They were much improved.
Yeah, and going into the upcoming Curry Cup tournament as well, that we'll see them do better. They generally do better in the Curry Cup sort of tournament, but it's still the same team, so that's to be seen. From a Sharks perspective, I'd be very concerned, because as we keep hammering on, just something doesn't seem right in the Sharks and the way that they play, and it could be a personnel thing where you know I don't feel that they have real leadership, and it's showing
Mm.
because if you had to look at the whole group as a whole, looking at them, the only guys that you can say, from that starting team, or even that whole full match day 23, Spoon Kosi is the only Springbok in their team, or Curran Bosch as well. But I mean, you know, he's not really that much of an influential player as much as in the past 2 weeks he's been the guy to bring it home for the Sharks. But looking at them, they only have about three guys that you can say they've made international. They have international caps and they have that somewhat international experience. But they're a young group overall. I think they will learn and they will look to improve, but they need to learn and improve very quickly.
I saw even going to what Nas Buerta said. Nas Buerta even said they've got to show more than a counter attack
Mm.
because it just seems like that's what they were relying on throughout the game.
Yeah, it doesn't look like they have their game together. They're not constructing their plays. It doesn't seem like there's a particular objective that they're looking to play. Whether that be, we're playing a two phase attack. Going to the open side and then coming back looking to attack the short side. It
Yeah.
doesn't look like there is direction, and it goes back to what I say is that there's no leadership, and part of that I'm going to put it on the direction of the team, or the driver of the team in terms of where they go. It comes from 10 as well, because he's got the vantage point and Curran Bosch calls the ball whenever he wants it, and he decides whether he's going to kick or not based on what the pictures that the defense is showing him. And I'd put more responsibility on him as the 10, to sort of direct the play. And again, it just questions their ability to sort of adapt to what's put in front of them to amend the game plan, whatever that game plan is, because we cannot see what it is that they're trying to play towards.
Yeah, and I mean there are some people who are gonna sort of give him the accolades because he did land up winning the game for them. Uh, Sort of some positives I took from the game. Borley was really big
Yeah.
for them. Big
Mm.
carries. big rip that led to their first try. You know, it goes to that balance in the loose trio. They sort of had more set roles. Those roles sort of get confused when Noche is in there. You know, sort of him and Pepsi sort of overlap in terms of their strengths.
Yes.
When you put Bolly in there, it's more defined roles. You've got the fetcher, you've got the hard man, you've got the number 8 who can link and play. And we did
Yeah.
see Pepsi link and play. You know, that breakthrough in the middle
In the middle of the
for
field.
their
Yeah.
tribe. That shows, you know, and you could similarly see Noche doing something similar to that. You know, they're quite similar and they overlap in that way. So for me, I think they've got to keep that balance. They can't mess it up. They've got to keep that balance in the loosies.
That's the ideal. I feel that's the ideal balance for them, you know, and the decision is going to have to come on who's going to be playing number 8, whether it's going to be Pepsi or Noche, because right now that's where the battle is, you know, between the two of them. And, you know, in actual fact, you could see they missed a guy like Kenko Fenta. Yes, he played the one game last week for the Sharks, you know, or two games so far. But you can see his level of experience, you know, having come from the Cheetahs. You can see that they sort of missed a guy like that, you know, within the loose trio. As much as they did well, you know, you can see his value in there. Again, I still hold firm on the fact that JJ Van der Mesh needs to be starting, you know, for that physicality factor to really bring to enforce, you know, and bring that additional grunt up front, because, you know, the Griquas pack really they wanted to play, you know, and they weren't taking they weren't taking a step back at all to the Sharks, you know, and they could really count themselves unlucky, you know. Tinus De Beer, I feel like he did well, although I still feel critical thing is, you know, it's key things. He could have dragged his penalty, you know, taking of his penalty kick to get them in front 33-31. Could have taken a bit more time, you know, and would have run up the clock, and they would have gotten the win, you know. But he left the Sharks he gave the Sharks a small window, and fortunately for the Sharks, they were able to take that opportunity that was presented to them when it came, you know, and thus they won the game. But not really. I'm still not impressed with the Sharks. I still think they have a long way to go. They're way off the mark from the team that they were during Super Rugby pre-COVID. So these guys are still, I think right now, at first I've given them a 3 out of 10 before. I think now they've graduated to at least 5, you know, because they've at least notched up the wins. So we'll give them a 5. They're halfway there.
Okay, going back to sort of positives that can be taken. No, Hamba, the contestable kicks, it was big for them. And I think, you know, it takes that pressure off Bosch, where, you know, he looks like he's coasting at times. He doesn't necessarily look like he's putting in. He's doing the kicks, but his work rate is questionable. And I mean, there was that point sort of in the game where they realized, I mean, they're not going to push the Griquas over, and they have to start taking points themselves, going for a line until they realized, okay, we're getting nothing here. I think it was a bit of a wake-up call for them. And if we move on to the Griquas, fatally for them, it was the kickoffs. Yeah. It seems like almost every kickoff immediately after they conceded points, whether it was them receiving the kickoff or them taking the kickoff, it just seemed like at every single point is where they faltered, which is, it's very disappointing, because you look at the scrums, much improved. You look at the lineouts, much improved. You look at them at the breakdown, they were getting involved there. So, you know, you put in that work, and then there's that one thing you leave out, and then that lands up costing you the game.
Yeah, because they effectively they undid all the hard work that they did, you know, because overall, I feel like the more balanced performance did come from the Griquas as a whole, as a team. You know, you can't single out a player and say, oh, you know, this guy, you know, he let the team down. They all put their hands up, you know, and they gave themselves, I feel they gave themselves a chance, you know, to win that game, which I feel they deserved. You know, I'm guessing you disagree with me, you know, so let's hear it.
There was I won't mention names, but someone came on and threw a few bad lineouts and then didn't roll away at the breakdown. But
well, that was a paid objective, you know. You know, loyalties they run deep, They run deep. So let's not talk about that.
Yeah, that
But
one, you don't know. You don't. I might see him in these streets. He might confront you. So let's just.
but okay, outside of that though, outside of that one individual, I think overall, you know, the Greekos, they find themselves in a position where they potentially could be building on something, but again, there's also that window, and we all know that it's there where potentially if their guys are performing at a high level, the bigger unions are going to come knocking and they're going
Yeah,
to
I
take
think
away
especially De Beer.
yeah, De Beer looked very solid, and I think you
I
can
think
see
he
him
was man
fitting.
of the match even.
Yeah, he was, and you can see him fitting into into most franchises, as a solid 10. Give him a good pack, give him a good backline, and and he'll do the job. I think we even saw that when he played for Tux at Varsity Cup.
Mm.
He's a good all round standoff at 10. So look, I was just happy to see a guy like Masiko Lepanda getting, finally, getting back into the picture of playing some rugby at a high level.
Eastern
You
Cape's
know,
Quade Cooper.
yeah, but he's good. He's good, and Zach Berger just continues to just push, and climb, and I feel like his stocks are rising. It's a pity that the competition at 9 is very stiff in the country, because
Yeah.
there's all of a sudden there's a good sort of flow of number 9s in the country that are putting their hands up to to try
But
and
I
stake
would
a claim for
say one of the points I have from the Cheetahs game is sort of that Tian Mayo wasn't impressive. So I mean, you
yeah.
look at the Greek was direct feeder team for the Cheetahs, and you've got to say that Tian Mayo there, he's
Mhm.
looking like he's going to get left out.
Yeah. Oh well, we can even go on to the cheaters. If we've wrapped up the Greekers. Fact of the matter, Greekers were unlucky not to win that game. They're the worst enemies, but
Yeah,
they
I
can only
have that
get
as
better.
well. I feel like they were their worst enemies. I have to point out the scrums, like you said, much improved. Uh, Mox there, Van der Westhuizen, they did well.
Mm.
The lineouts, they sorted them out. I think that's got a lot to do with they brought Lindsay in there, Cameron Lindsay, and he did well.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, I think the, the kickoffs is just what killed him on the day. Franke is a minister of defense himself,
No,
a police unit.
yeah, that guy's a banger. That guy's a banger. You're not getting through that guy, and I think we've seen it historically through the
Yeah,
years. He's always been a hard hitter. In the centers days, Mr. Reliable, and it showed. And that's why I feel overall, I feel
even
like
Klaassen, who I was picking on, he showed up on the day. So I have to commend the boys.
no, he heard you. He heard you, and he was like, he has to prove quarters wrong. And he needed to pitch, and that's what we want to see. Want to see the guys pitching up and getting better. I mean, it's
Yeah,
their job. It's their job to deliver on the day. There's no room to hide. I feel at that level. So you know,
just one more thing I wanted to get to on the Greek was you brought up the point with the Sharks where they're lacking identity and they're sort of lacking structure.
mm,
With the Greek was what we did see is the way that they kept it tight and played the short side.
mm,
You know, that's identifying your strengths and moving off of them. I think we saw that for one of their tries, and then we saw again when they disrupted the Sharks more and they
yes.
broke away. That keeping it tight and playing that short side, I think it's 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 gone well for them, and they sort of identified that goes into their strengths. So I thought
Yeah, and I
that
think
was very good from them.
that was, and you can see that's a coaching thing because if you go back to round one, even against the Bulls, it is a similar blueprint that they were playing where they attacked the short side, and they did keep it tight and they were working hard up front, and that almost paid dividends for them against the Bulls, and yet again almost paid dividends for them against the Sharks, and it's something that I feel as a coaching group for them, Scott Matthew and his guys, they don't need to steer away from that because that is a formula that will bring them results. They just need consistency in personnel. That's number one, which is going to be very difficult for them. And
Yeah.
then number two is in cutting out the critical areas, because we know a union like the Griquas, they cannot afford to make mistakes like that. You cannot afford to score points and then on the back of that give away points, and undo the hard work that you've done. And the nice thing for them, I'd say, is that all of those are fixables, and hopefully going into the Curry Cup, if the player personnel is still there, the bulk of them, we'll definitely see a continued improvement from the Griquas, I believe. Just lastly on the Sharks as well, I just feel, look, they need to just, again, I'm just re-emphasizing what I said. They need to find who they are, and how they want to play, and do that very quickly, and there needs to be some leadership shown out there in the pack. And the more experienced guys, like your Hiron Andrews, who's been there, he needs to start making that step up, and putting his hand up and leading. Because fact of the matter, as much as I don't rate him, he is there, and because he's there, he needs to do the job and he needs to lead. Guys like Pepsi, who's a previous SA under-20 captain, I think, as we see him get more game time, him becoming more comfortable, I think we're going to start seeing him becoming more of a leader in that pack, and really taking things by the scruff of the neck. And that's what we'd want to see. Sanele Nohamba, I think, solid enough. He's showing that he continues to grow, and he's got a lot of potential in him to really get to that next level.
Especially with the kicking, because I mean that's what they really value at test level.
Yeah, test level, the kicking game is very important, and I think we'll get into the test match situation after we go into the next game. The Stormers and the Cheetahs, which was a surprise, surprise for me, to be honest.
Yeah, let's get into that one. I mean, I had predicted the Cheetahs winning.
Same.
Because, I said Francois Steyn was there. But, I mean, if I had known this was the last game at Newlands, I don't think I would have gone that way, because you know how guys get emotional and sort of play for
that was I think that was one of the factors. And then, again, like we said last week, the Khalan factor. You cannot ignore the Khalan factor, and I feel it just seems as if Galant is really galvanizing their attack, from a creativity point of view. And it just seems the young man, Damien Willemse, is also now starting to find his feet, starting to find his confidence again, knowing that he's got his brother, he's got his massacant over there, and they're lighting things up, because they're feeding off each other. And it just looks like Galant has just taken a lot of the pressure off Willemse in terms of having to spark things and make things happen, So in that perspective, the Galant show will continue, and it's good to see. It's good for the Springboks, but the emotional side of it, being the last game at Newlands, I think that also contributed a lot to that performance. And the Cheetahs, the Cheetahs really, it just seems like they're losing their bearings slightly, and they're off the mark. And you can see now the value of a Ruan Pienaar. I mean, Tian May is a pretty experienced number 9, is pretty experienced player, at 9. But the calm head of a Ruan Pienaar, you can see that being missed, from a game management perspective, and making and putting his team in the right positions, from 9, and taking a lot of pressure off his 10. And you could see that they missed that guarding factor, the driver. There was no real driver of that team.
Yeah, for me, like Tian May, it's sort of like, what are you bringing in terms of, the identity to which you're playing? Are you being creative? Are you kicking? Are you taking pressure off? As he wasn't really doing any of that. He was just purely providing service,
Yeah.
So, I mean, you've got to look to add something. You look at the other scrum halves, Zach Berger. I mean, you look the Lions, Morne van der Berg. These guys, they've got something about them. And I think the issue for him was he just didn't have anything about him on the day.
He really didn't, and I mean, even it just looks like Fisher Yankees, the being dropped. So you call it that. We don't know why he wasn't playing the last game, but effectively, it just looks like that did him a world of good, because he came back, he looked like a different player, and even just the general work rate of the Stormers pack. That's the thing. At the end of the day, you have to commend them because they put in.
They looked a rejuvenated side. They were
Yes.
playing in blue. It looked like that was a statement as well. Playing in the blue as well. It gave them a different feeling. They were getting that go forward ball. I mean, you look at that first try, they were getting that go forward ball. Davids did well to stay in.
Yes.
And then caught Malcolm napping. That's the sharpness that you see Yanci's playing with. And I think Willemse and Yanci showed up on the day.
They did.
In major ways, major ways. I mean, Willemse, 65% kicking for the competition. It's not very impressive at all. And then he shows up with a drop goal and 2 penalties in the first half. It sort of changed his fortunes around immediately.
And I feel that look, he managed to really control that game, really well and drive that game from the 10 position, and a lot of credit must go to his pack, because his pack allowed him to do that. They gave him that ball, and as you mentioned, just the overall team looked rejuvenated, and credit to them for taking the opportunities that were presented to them, because they made the Cheetahs look like an average team in my view. They just outworked them, they outmuscled them, and it just seems like the loss of Jasper Wiese. That's the only sort of parallel that I can draw for the Cheetahs. Is that the loss of Jasper Wiese has resulted in them sort of almost taking a backward step from the go forward and physicality point of view, because he brought a lot of mongrel to that pack, and he was their premier guy, their go-to guy.
Even in that game, losing Rudolph, just after halftime, you've lost Wiese, then you've lost Rudolph. It's not going to serve you well.
It won't, because for a time it did look like it was going to be a sort of an arm wrestle of a game, for a brief period, but then it just went away from the Stormers just outpassioned the Cheetahs, and for me, Malcolm Yar's mistake was a cardinal error, just not manning his post and not keeping his eye on the ball, on what could potentially happen, and again, you have to question
the Kings boys. Both of the Kings boys, they got caught up this weekend. Bentley, with getting shrugged off by Keita. Both of the King boys, they didn't have a weekend to remember.
They didn't. They really didn't. And especially with Malcolm Yar. But I think for me, just you have to question whether or not the continuity factor did affect the Cheetahs. Because they effectively had 2 weeks off, and it just seems like 2 weeks is a lifetime in rugby, and it just seems like their 2 weeks didn't do them well. Because they lost a game that they came back, and they couldn't. They couldn't resuscitate their campaign essentially, and it showed. And again, like I say, credit to the Stormers for putting them under the pressure, and physically stepping up, because one of the things that we have mentioned in the past weeks is that the Stormers didn't look fit. They didn't look like a fit side, and it just seems like now they're getting their fitness is about.
And one man, going back to Gelan looks fitter than everybody on the field. Consistently. Yeah. He looks fitter than everyone in the field. He looks sharper than those inside, outside, running at defenders. He's changing direction. He looks fitter than a lot of the guys there.
Yeah, and that's the kind of player that you expect Geland to be. And it just seems like he's got that license to
the freedom to play that he didn't have at the Bulls.
Yeah, to go in there and really call the plays, and he almost comes in as a second sort of 10, in terms of sparking things. And the beauty of him is that he can play those close quarters, and he's actually more elusive than Damian Willemse in that regard, and it showed, and it showed, because a lot of their attack, and their creativity on attack, it comes from him at fullback, and I wouldn't say that's an unexpected source, but it just goes to show his value to the Stormers, and what that move for him personally, I believe, really is really allowing him to actually sort of to grow his game and show the touches that he showed early on in his career, from the time when he was still at Otinikwa, coming through at Esviadia, and then early ranks in the Bulls, where he was that electrifying player. And it just seems like he's recapturing that form and that freedom. And credit to the Stormers coaching group for allowing him to.
Yeah, I think we've just got to tell that guy, just go out and do what you feel.
Yeah. But I guess, again, from a Stormers coaching group, that's what pressure will make you do. Pressure will make you try things, and allow guys to express themselves. And I believe that pressure has told, and they got the results. The Cheetahs were a team that were looking very dangerous in the competition, and we saw that by the individual brilliance of Roscoe Speckman with that magical try. That was
he's playing at a higher level than a lot of people on that field.
Yeah, that's the thing. And look, you'd have to argue, and we saw it with the guy like Cheslin Colby getting a crack at test level. Roscoe Speckman, question, is he a potential possibly, to feature as a game breaker, considering the Lions 2021, he is a player that could bring a sort of different attacking impetus. We don't know yet. I think his work rate speaks for himself. He's got his sevens background. So, if he continues in this fashion, I think he'll make it very difficult for the national selectors to overlook him, because
definitely.
Even a guy like Yao Peng, as much as, yes, the Sharks brought him in, he hasn't really doesn't seem like he's settled in as yet, to really, shoot out the lights. Even a guy like Malcolm Yar, he's been a bit hot and cold, and Speckman, he's been consistent, in terms of him really being a threat out wide. He really is a dangerous player. And for me, overall, it's just disappointing, when you look at the Cheetahs team, the composition of their team and the continuity that they've had. Yes, they've had a few changes here and there, but, as a group, in terms of the core group, it still remains. But it just seems like I say, they're just sort of losing their way a bit. And a lot of that, I don't know. I'd say even, Junior Pokamela may have been feeling the pressure, but but again, he's a new captain, so he is going to learn. He's going to learn how to pull his team out of adversity. And for me, that's what I would want. Particularly for a guy like Junior Pokamela, because he's a black player, captaining a union like the Cheetahs. So for me, I'm otherwise invested in seeing his success.
I think for them also on the day, you've got Francois Steyn coming back, who had, he was making those big runs, but it was resulting in knock-ons. So I mean, you've got to wonder if he's 100% fit, which I don't think he was.
Yeah.
Luan de Bruin as well. You get Rudolph coming off the field, then you get Luan de Bruin coming off the field. I mean, and those are two of your premier guys. Chunu came on, and my goodness, he was holding on for dear life there. There he was. I credit the man. He held on long enough for them to get the ball out, but immediately after that he folded. So it's the tough one going up against Kitsov. But like you said, they were in that game at certain points, and like 20 to 13. Before that moment of brilliance from Willemse, they were in the game. But just those issues with Frans Steyn, Rudolph, Luan de Bruin, it just couldn't come together for them. In terms of next week, Shark Stormers called off.
Yeah, that's unfortunate.
Yeah.
That would have been a very exciting game to watch, a coastal derby, but COVID is really having an impact,
Bulls, Pumas should be good as well. Pumas, we'll see how they did with the break. And I think it was them that had the positive COVID test. So we'll see the changes that come of that team. Cheetahs Creek was big brother, little brother, should be a good one.
That's going to be a cracker, if I had to go back, to the Bulls, Pumas, the Bulls, by the looks of it, the games that are cancelled, it looks like Jake White is going to taste some success with some silverware. If should they notch up a win, I don't even think they need to even win. that game, but you know they look almost a share-in for the title. You know, based on the cancelled games and the points that they have. You know, and overall on the balance of things, if you actually look at it, you know, looking at all the teams, if you cast your eye across that whole table, you know, you could argue the Bulls have been on an upward trajectory, so thus making them the more consistent side, you know, out of all the groups. Even can even argue that the Lions, you know, but the Lions have the issues of their own, their teething issues. But yeah, look, credit to the Bulls, you know, for and their coaching group for them getting to this point where they could potentially, you know, taste victory and get their first silverware under Jake White. You know, the Cheetahs and Griquas game, that's gonna be a crack of a game because you know the Griquas guys, you know, they're fighting for contracts to
Fighting
show
for
the Cheetahs
contracts,
guys
yeah.
to say, hey, you don't belong here, I do, you know. So and this is Zach Berger, you know, this is
Yeah, got mouths
his
to feed, yeah.
you know, the kids are hungry, you know, kids are hungry. So
Those
I
mullets,
think
it takes a lot of maintenance. I'm
yeah,
going to, I need the
that's
product.
effort there.
I need this contract to pay for those products.
So I think, look, that game, that one will be close to call. You know, Cheetahs losing 3 in a row. It's possible, you know, but I'd say, you know, if I had to call it, I'd say, look, predictions have been wrong this whole season, but I'll go for it because I want to see Junior Pocombela do well. So I'm gonna say,
No, I
look,
think the Cheetahs will win. I think the Cheetahs will win.
yeah, they should, you know, they should. But I'd say it would be a tighter game, probably by 8 points that the Cheetahs will win by. Bulls against Pumas, I think Bulls to win that game as well, 10 points plus.
Yeah, I think I've got 15 for the Bulls there. The Cheetahs, I think the Cheetahs around 10.
Mm.
That one I really will be paying attention to it. Like I said, you know, De Beer, he's gonna be going at
Tian Skuman.
Schoolman there, so it should be interesting.
Yeah, they
And
should
then
know
on
each other very
to
well from Tux days, you know, and time at the
yeah,
Bulls. So
he's been
should be
eyeing him up for a long time. He's been looking to take his place for a long time. So
now he's got his shot.
we'll see that one. Moving on to Argentina, New Zealand. This one, it looked like an Argentina home game.
Mm, it
That
did.
crowd, they were really up for it. Argentina were up for it as well.
Yes.
Great game. I think that test match feel, it had
Yeah.
that test match feel in abundance. You know, it really,
Yes.
it's that passion, the way it stirred the soul. It was what you need, and it's that kind of thing that gets you itching to see the Boks play.
Yeah. True. You know, and look, you have to take your hat off to Argentina. You know, I think it's been a long time coming. You know, for them. You know, they've pushed the All Blacks before close.
Yeah,
There's been in recent history where they've pushed them close. You know, and it was bound to happen. You know, one thing that you can say about them, they looked very well prepared. You know, you'd have to not even question, but you'd have to highlight the impact of a coach like Michael Cheika being involved. You
definitely.
know, because I think he had Ledesma with him when he was Australia coach. You know, to assist him with the scrums, and now he's involved with Argentina. You know, so clearly they have a good relationship there, and they've been able to deliver a message to those players and deliver a plan for them to execute and nullify the All Blacks. You know, because they didn't let the All Blacks play at all. As much as the All Blacks discipline let them down, at the
Yeah,
end
they
of the
were very
day,
chippy on the day. They were very like, you know, you've
yeah,
got situations with Aaron Smith passing the ball into someone that's retreating. You've got Dane Cole's, you know, a bit of a slap around here and there. It's sort of poor form and unbecoming of All
yeah,
Blacks. You know how they like to have their culture and whatever. I mean, it's something you'd more likely see from Australia.
yes.
Uh, wasn't Frizzell, on the other hand, he looked like he was in his element. He looked like he should have had an Argentina jersey on because they were playing his type of rugby.
Yeah, they really were, you know. And at the end of the day, you have to looking at that game, like you mentioned, pure test match feel. Defense, defense is critical, and I think the Springboks has been the team that has been able to show the blueprint to the rest of the world in terms of how to beat the All Blacks by cutting down their time, cutting down their space. We saw that under Jake White, in the victories that preceding coaches have had, after Jake White, like with Peter de Villiers. That was the main thing, as well, defense and bullying them at the breakdown, and that's what Argentina did. They absolutely shut
The
them down. They didn't let
physicality.
the
Those
physicality
big
of it all.
hits, Kramer, some of those big hits that he was putting in. I mean,
They were immense. That loose forward trio of Argentina looked like they were 10 levels above the loose forward trio of the All Blacks. And the All Blacks, I believe, they're suffering from I believe this is what they're suffering from, is that they have players there that have experience. That's number one, but they're playing guys out of position. They're not playing their best team. Well, let me not say that, because it'll sound like I'm making an excuse. I'm not making an excuse for them. It's a coaching thing for me, because they're not playing their best team, and it essentially just appears as if they're picking guys off reputation, and that's what's going to cost them, because a guy like Dane Coles doesn't have that X factor that he used to have. If his X was size 10, it's a size 5 now. So if you look at that, you look at arguably a guy like Brodie Retallick, in their engine, in terms of the way that they want to play, you can see that there is no replacement for a guy like Brodie Retallick. And that showed in last year's World Cup against England, where they were out-muscled, where they really hammered physically, and they don't have an answer for it. And for me, Patrick Tuipulotu, as much as he's a good enough player, but he doesn't, for a big man, he doesn't bring that physicality. He doesn't bring that grunt, that it doesn't strike fear in opposition teams, for me. And that's what they lack. In terms of the way that they want to play, in terms of international rugby, you'd have to question: is their pack suitable? Do they have a pack that is fit for purpose to win tight test matches, particularly when teams are going to match them physically, or going to cut down their space, cut down their time? What's their sort of plan B? And they don't have a plan B, and they've been exposed too many times. And that's why I think at the beginning of the Bledisloe series, I felt that they've lost their aura. Yes, fine, they bounced back, but this proves again that they've lost their aura. Yes, it's a new group. Yes, they're rebuilding.
Yeah, a lot of excuses thrown around. I saw we were more fatigued, things of that nature. And I mean, for me, typically what happens is Argentina play South Africa and then go over. They've essentially cut that out. And I mean, look at the difference.
Yeah.
So that whole we're fatigued thing, I mean, I don't buy too much into it. Similarly, you could say Argentina were out of match fitness, but they still pulled it through. No complaints for them. Like you said, going to preparation and coaching, you look at their running lines.
Yes.
And they just their general movement was very good. I think also the ability to think on your feet, against the All Blacks is one of the major things, where I feel like South Africa, in the performance where they do pull it out against the All Blacks, that's what their players show. And I feel like Argentina showed that on the day, where guys can scramble and sort of move forward or find the support that they need, not get isolated. So I think that was very good for them. They got under the All Black skin.
Yes. Big time.
Yeah, in a major way. And I mean, you look at it at a point where it's sort of 13-3. You hear Justin Marshall saying, "Oh no, you got to sort of go for line, kill these guys off if you want to get your first victory against the All Blacks." That's playing into their hands. And I mean, they had that scrum on the 5 meter, and then they decided to take points. And I mean, it goes back to that saying, test match rugby, always take your points.
That's exactly it. I'm glad that you touched on that, because I wanted to touch on that, where at the moment I'm questioning the captaincy of a Sam Cane, and how much sort of authority that he has, whereas the coach cannot override his on-field decision, because there were they had opportunities the way they were in the strike zone. And for me, in a test match situation, the logical thing would have been take the 3 points, get the scoreboard ticking over, and keep grinding it out until you get your opportunity. Because historically, that's what we've come to know All Black teams to be. They hang in there, even though we've seen so many games. We've been to many games where South Africa is playing New Zealand, and South Africa's ahead, and New Zealand is just hanging on. They're keeping the scoreboard, ticking it over, taking their points, and then they get that one moment where they can score a try, they take the game, and this time around, it seems like they've moved away from their sort of identity. It just looks like they too have an identity crisis in terms of how they want to play. And it starts up front for me, is they really have an issue in their pack, because their backs are abundantly talented. Yes, they make mistakes. A guy like Jordie Barrett, I don't believe Jordie Barrett is a good winger. I believe he's better off at fullback. But they find themselves in a selection conundrum where they've got so many good players, and it's difficult for them to make a decision, as to which players they need to have on the field, and that's what's killing them right now, is that I believe the coaches they're not making the difficult decisions, and that's why they're not finding consistency in play. They're not finding consistency in results. And just to touch on what you mentioned about Argentina in terms of the way that they played, their movements, their running lines. Ever since Argentina entered into the Rugby Championship, which is now the Tri Nations for now, they've brought that into the competition. Where, if you remember, I think they had Graham Henry consult to them for a while, and you could see the improvement in the running lines, and we saw that when they beat South Africa, and they've consistently had that ability to play with the high tempo. And I think one of the things that really helped them was their ability to last the 80 minutes. They looked like the All Blacks, if that sounds right, because they played with tempo. They had brilliant running lines. Physically they were just in New Zealand's faces. At the breakdown, they bossed the breakdown. They didn't miss tackles. Kremer, as you mentioned, he had a blind of the game. Pablo Matera, the captain, we know the kind of player that he is. He's a difficult customer to bring down, and he showed that. And New Zealand had no answer. Ardie Savea, yes, he tried, but I don't believe 8-man is his best position. I really don't. They have a conundrum between Ardie Savea. Ardie Savea, I think his best position is playing 7. But the problem is they have the captain is at 7, and like I say, the tough decisions need to be made. And right now, I feel the coaching group of New Zealand is letting themselves down by failing to make those difficult decisions within that squad.
Yeah, it's great test match rugby, and for me, like I said, it's just got me itching to see the box. You think about the next game that we play against Argentina, how that's going to be. You think about how the All Blacks are there for the taking. You think about how Australia beat New Zealand. It's going to be very interesting once you add South Africa into that mix. You think about Northern Hemisphere, and it's stale. And then you think about Southern Hemisphere and how many questions are being posed right now in terms of all those teams. And then you add the world champions into the mix. I think it's going to be very special, the next full rugby championship that we have.
Yes, I agree with you. And I kind of feel like right now, with COVID and everything, COVID has allowed for a major reset in almost everything. And the rugby world is one of those situations where there's an opportunity for a top tier nation, i.e. South Africa, to enter into the fray when they do back into test rugby and create a new dynasty where there is a new king of the jungle that will stay on top for the next 12 years and really dismantle the All Blacks' aura, because All Blacks, they've had a stronghold on world rugby for over 10 years, and that's why they've been able to be the team of the decade. You know, with their 80%, 90% win rate record. You know, and there needs to be a new king. You know, and South Africa is prime for that. I just believe South Africa is prime for that. This is the one opportunity going into the next in 2021 when we re-enter into the test rugby fray. We have the chance, we have the opportunity to really create a dynasty where the Springbok brand of rugby is feared worldwide, where we are sitting with a 90% win record for the next 10 years, 12 years.
And I think as well, the Lions series comes at a good time for World Rugby, you know, for the excitement of the game. It comes at a really, really good time. You think, had South Africa not won the World Cup, had New Zealand won the World Cup, the Lions series wouldn't have been as interesting.
Yeah, it wouldn't have.
So,
and
yeah, things, for me, I just feel like the way things have fallen right now is that it's great for the game, and it's more exciting.
Yeah, definitely. And honestly, for me, from what we saw, what Argentina did with very few test match preparation, I still believe SA Rugby did the right thing by not sending the Springboks to participate. No matter what, you know, the New Zealanders or Australians or Argentinians can say, you know, we have our own reasons. At the end of the day, SA Rugby needs to look after its own brand. You know, we're not going to just enter into a competition that we believe we won't be in a good position to win. You know, so for me, it's exciting because when we do enter the test fray, it's an opportunity to make a big statement and win the series against the British and Irish Lions. And I hope that we do whitewash them, you know, and if we do whitewash them, that'll be the beginning, I believe, of a new Springbok era where South Africa consistently is number one, where South Africa is, like I say, the new king of the jungle, you know, and when New Zealand will play second, the top dogs. That's the thing where they now have to play second fiddle to us, because from a physical point of view, I've been watching Mitre 10 Cup and looking at it. I don't believe New Zealand have the physical ability up front to match the Springboks, and England exposed that. You know, England exposed that, Argentina exposed that, even Australia and beating them also exposed that. Is that they just don't have that anymore. You know, you look at the guys like I mentioned, you know, Brodie Retallick missing from even years gone by where they had your Jerome Kanos in there, real hard men. They're the ones that actually do not have hard men, you know, in their group and within their sort of ecosystem of players. So I really believe we are primed, Courts. We are primed to come out and be, you know, the top dogs on the World Rugby stage. You know, we already are world champions, but we need to underline it by being top even between World Cup cycles, and that'll be good for our rugby, I believe.
And that's it. That's it for us this week. Dummy switch on.
It's always
Thank
good,
you
Courts.
to
It's always
my
good.
co-host Chris, and that's it, guys. Like, share, subscribe. Thank you for watching. Spread the news. The All Blacks have lost.
Yeah, they've lost. And they will lose again.
That's it from us. Cheers, guys.
Cheers.